If by some chance you were president, which would be insane, that would be like the Hail Mary of all Hail Marys, or you had a spot working with Trump, how would you go to work to try to fix the epidemic of fatherlessness in this country for both white people and black people?
Can I say one more thing too? Because you mentioned this on that you'd seen the Charlemagne the God. I just want people to understand how acute this thing is. This is according to the Centers for Disease Control. A young black man aged 10 to 43 is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a white man, same demo. The number one cause of preventable death for a white male 19 years and younger is accidents, like car accidents or drownings or drug overdoses. Number one cause of preventable death for a 19-year-old male and under is homicide, almost always at the hands of another 19-year-old black male and under. Blacks account for 60% of the homicides, the robberies, and the shootings in America. Now, unless you're prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime, I don't think anybody's prepared to say that. If it isn't fatherlessness, please tell me what it is. And whenever I ask people that, they have nothing. I asked that to Charlemagne, he had nothing. Those two people, young people I mentioned at the other podcast I did, they had nothing.
Why? I don't understand that.
It's
specifically that.
Because it's hard for them to look in the mirror and say, maybe, just maybe, we're not doing some things we ought to be doing. Maybe, just maybe, it's us.
Everybody's got to take responsibility for everything.
I have a friend who lives in Midtown, LA. And it's an area in Midtown LA called Koreatown. There's a library on the corner of a street called Olympic and Vermont. And my friend said, come on, I'll show you something. And there's a library on a little hill. And there are these Hispanic kids doing skateboard tricks and flipping and stuff like that. I used to do skateboarding when I was a kid. I couldn't imagine doing the trips these guys were doing. He said, let's go inside the library. Inside the library, Michael, wall-to-wall Korean kids and their parents standing because there weren't enough chairs. Not a single Hispanic in the building. Now fast forward, who's working the deep fry at McDonald's? Who's head of marketing and sales at Merck? This is what's going on. And these are things that we can do. Every group has a grievance. Japanese were put in relocation camps in World War II. In California, it was illegal for Japanese people to own farmland. Japanese have higher household income and net worth than the average white American. China. Chinese people were the first ones to have an act called the Chinese Immigration Act to exclude them from being immigrated to America. There were riots in places like LA and San Francisco and Spokane, anti-Asian, anti-Chinese riots. They now have a higher household income and net worth than the average white American. Jews were treated badly. One of the reasons schools like Brandeis were founded is because you couldn't get a job as a professor, you couldn't get tenure. Law firms, same thing, accounting firms. Every group has a grievance. You have to do the best you can, take advantage of available opportunities in America, and a lot of black people are just not doing that. They don't want to hear it. So one more quick thing.
Go ahead.
1997, Time Magazine, CNN did this massive survey of black teenagers and white teenagers. We're talking about over 25 years ago. Is racism a major problem in America? And both black teenagers and white teenagers said yes. But then black teens were asked, is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? 89% of black teens said it's a small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, by a 2-to-1 margin, more black teens and white teens said, quote, failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism, end of quote. That was 25 years ago. That was before Barack Obama. I mean, so this is what's going on. And when I talk about this, a lot of people on the left don't want to hear it because they think I'm letting white people off the hook. I'm doing no such thing. What I'm saying is America has changed. It's changed mightily. When 1966, 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64, Martin Luther King goes on British television. And he says, I am shocked by the progress I'm seeing in the last 2 years. Why, if America changes this rapidly, in about 40 years' time, we could have a black president. Do the math, 2008, almost right on cue. He didn't say in 40 years' time we'll have a black president of Harvard University, female, and we do. He didn't say in 40 years' time the mayors of LA, New York, Chicago will all be black, and they are. He didn't say in 40 years' time there'll be a black governor of one of the states of the Confederacy, Virginia, and there was. He didn't say in 40 years' time that the heads of the two most prestigious organizations, the American Bar Association, American Medical Association, will be black. We've had two. He said president, meaning once it happens, I can now say to the fullest extent that's practical, America is now evaluating people based on content of character, not color of skin. Now it's as if it never even happened. We don't talk about it anymore.
What's have never happened?
Like Obama never got elected.
Oh, right.
It doesn't even mean anything anymore.
Right.
I mean, on the day he got elected, I'm old school.
But don't you think it was like a figure thing, a figurehead, almost like how you're saying in Harvard? I mean, it's the president, so it's bigger, but like Harvard this, the bar this. To me, when we look back on it, it's like, oh yeah, a black man was president. That's it.
Michael?
To me, that's what it was there because, really, we could say what we want to say, and that's a huge thing. It was a black man as president, his wife, obviously first lady. But, did the world change? Did things change? In my opinion, they didn't.
I can address it, but first let's go back to that moment. The next day, I'm old school. I get the LA Times and New York Times thrown to my house. I bend over, I pick it up. On the front pages of both of them are color pictures of black parents crying, holding their kids. And they're all saying the same thing. I can now tell my kid, you can grow up and be anything you want and not have to have my fingers crossed behind my back. I can now say that. That's what people thought.
Right.
And now, as I said, it's like it never happened. And you're right, nothing really changed because the election of a president, as Barbara Bush once put it this way, what happens in your house is far more important than what happens in the White House. Did it change people's behavior about going to school? Did it change people's behavior about not having kids outside of wedlock? No, it didn't. I have a friend who I thought was a conservative, and he supported Barack Obama. It shocked me. And I said, why? He said, he'll encourage black kids to go to school, to not drop out. I said, what's your evidence that that's going to happen? He said, I just have a feeling it's going to happen. It didn't. I checked the amount of homework that black kids do versus white kids versus Asian American kids like this.
And you attribute this to fatherlessness.
Absolutely.
So going back to my question that I asked, if you were part of the next president, albeit Trump, or you became president, lightning strikes, Hail Mary, Roger Staubach down the field, what would you do specifically to try to improve that?
The first thing you do is acknowledge the problem.
Right.
That's why I supported the Million Man March in the mid-'90s. I didn't support the messenger, but I supported the message. And what he said, Farrakhan, he said, man up. When you bring children into the world, you have a moral obligation to feed them, to clothe them, to house them, to educate them. And failing to do that means you're not really a man. Mm-hmm. I supported all of that. Second thing, these kids need mentors. I liken it, Michael, to AA, where you're an alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic, you have a sponsor. You have somebody, you pick up the phone, call, guy comes to you, talks to you, mentors you. There are a whole bunch of baby boomers my age who are retired, about ready to retire. They're physically fit. They've raised their children. They've nurtured their grandchildren. They have life experience. They have wisdom. I'm urging them all to get involved and to step up and be mentors. Mm-hmm. If you can't do that, at least give resources to your local churches and other organizations in your own community doing this work. And there are people doing this stuff all over the place. Mm-hmm. My church is the Calvary Chapel Church of Chino Hills. We have a program where men go door to door here in Harlem, offering mentorships. Get involved. Step up. Secondly, we spend a lot of money, waste a lot of money at the federal level and at the state level in various capitals on programs designed to fight poverty that just don't work. Instead of my tax dollars going to New York, going to DC, can I just, on my form, check out where I want my tax dollars to go, write down the organizations they should go to? There's an organization in LA called Bond, Brotherhood of a New Destiny, led by a guy named Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. What he does is mentor people who grew up without fathers. Calm them down, tell them they shouldn't be so angry, have them forgive their fathers. That's what he does. And there are organizations like that all over the country. They need hands, they need money.